Hey y'all, this is Amanda and welcome back to my Texas Donate a Garden, and today we're going to be starting a lot of spring annuals that I can plant as soon as the weather warms up. Okay, so we're gonna be starting some spring annuals, things that we typically would pick up at, a local nursery or a big box store at the beginning of spring. And while I will probably do some of that, I wanted to cut back on my expenses this year as plant costs have gone up quite a bit. And so I'm gonna be starting some of these, traditional ones that you might see in your nursery. I wanted to start some of them from seed and see how I could do with them. And if it ends up working, well, it'll save me a whole lot of money. For the seeds I'm starting today, I'm gonna be utilizing the traditional soil blocking method. Now, if you've caught up on my other ones, my Vigo seedling trays that I'm working with, they're doing really, really well, and I'll try to give you an update partway through. On the seedlings over here, everything's up, everything's germinating, they're really great. But as you remember with the Vigo, I only purchased 16 trays to try out this year just to see if it's something I liked before investing in a whole bunch of them. So that leaves me with the traditional soil blocking method, which I've done in the past. I'm fine with the soil blocking method. However, it doesn't really work when I have to do plants where I only need like 4 or 5, 6, 7, whatever, smaller amounts of plants. When I plant in a traditional, when I do soil blocks in a traditional tray like this, you want to put all seeds together that germinate at the same rate. And so typically, if you're a bigger gardener, you'll do 72 blocks in here or 50 blocks in here or something like that, which is far more than I need of any one particular plant. But today, with the spring annuals I'm working with, I do need quite a few of each of those plants. So let's go through those seeds. First off, I'm going to be starting some new violas and pansies for the spring. I love violas and pansies for the spring. I think they're just so fun and joyful. They can handle if we have some cold snaps. And so I think they'll work really, really great. I tend to use a lot of them in a bunch of my fairy gardens in the spring. This year is really drawn to black, which I know sounds crazy and that seems kind of weird for spring, but they do have a punch of yellow in them and a touch of purple. And I think they'll go a long way to really contrast with some really beautiful other spring colors. So the first one is Pansy Black Devil from Baker Creek. It's a dark indigo ink color with a yellow eye. They're about 6 inches tall, and so they should be really good. This one sprouts in 10 to 20 days. It is surface sowed, so right on the top, not going to be covering it up. The second black flower I'm going to be growing is Bowles Black Viola. These are tiny, petite, sweet little ones. They're a black pansy. They are about 6 inches tall, great for beds, borders, pots, and baskets. These sprout in about 5 to 8 days. So the germination process isn't too far off. This one's 10 to 20, this one's 5 to 8. It would be really good for me to go ahead and separate these into 2 separate containers. I don't want to put both of them in the same container. This one sprouts way faster than this one. And this one, if it goes ahead and sprouts and then I have to leave the humidity dome on for an additional 10 days while I'm waiting for this one to sprout, this one might end up going moldy and it might rot and I might lose that seed. So I'm going to go ahead and separate these out into 2 piles. So this is the longer germination and this is the quicker germination. An additional viola I'm starting is Mineola Heart Aqua, and these are beautiful kind of mustard green aqua blue violas. Beautiful, 6 inches tall, great for containers, beds, borders, planting. These sprout in 5 to 8 days, so I'm going to put them in the quicker sprouting pile. And the last viola I'm growing is a Frizzle Sizzle Yellow Blue Swirl. And I actually purchased some of these from Covington's during their 50% off sale in January. And I've got them out in the garden and they're absolutely beautiful. I'm obsessed with how ruffly and pretty they are. So I wanted to grow some myself. It doesn't give me a lot of description over it, but it basically has lots and lots of ruffles. Let me see what my germination time is on this. This one germinates in 4 to 7 days. So I'm going to put it in the shorter germination pile. Now, switching to a different variety of spring annual, I'm going to start with an alyssum, and this is Sweet Tiny Tim alyssum. This is short and sweet, superior alyssum, honey scented flowers, cover compact flowers with a summer snowdrift. So I'm really excited to kind of get these started. These take 5 to 15 days to germinate. So they're kind of in the middle. So basically what I'll do is I'll see how everything else fits in the tray and then I'll decide where I want to put the alyssum. And then the last variety I'm going to be starting from seed today are petunias, but not just any petunias. I got these from Baker Creek this year. These are brand new and they are ruffled and gorgeous and giant petunias. And when I say giant, I don't necessarily mean the plant, I mean the actual flower. So this one right here is called Super Bismuth Cernes Triumph Mix. It's a mix of beautiful violets, plums, purples, and ivories. These are double petaled and some are single. They're about 1 to 2 feet tall and they're smothered in massive 5 to 7 inch flowers. Those are some big petunia flowers. I'm very excited to see how these do. These sprout in about 7 to 14 days, so I'm gonna put them in the longer pile over here. And the last petunia variety I'm gonna be growing is called Lace Veil. This is also from Baker Creek and new this year. And it is fascinating frazzled edges in kind of an ivory white color. These are 3-inch blooms, so they're smaller, but they have lots and lots of ruffles that it looks like delicate lace on the edges. So I'm really excited about trying that as well. These sprout in about 7 to 14 days. Okay, so I've got my piles divided out. This is the shortest to the longest, and this is in the middle of the alyssum. So I'll just kind of play it by ear where I want to do the alyssum. If I'm unsure, then I can always put it in its own separate tray, even if I don't have a bunch of soil blocks filling the entire thing. Now, none of these seeds require anything particularly special. They have been in the freezer for a few weeks. That's just something that I tend to do, but that's not necessarily required. These don't have to be soaked or anything like that prior to putting them in your soil blocks. However, all of these do need light for germination. So I'm just gonna be lightly pressing the seed into the top of the soil. I'm not gonna be covering it up at all. And they do need to stay moist throughout their entire germination process. So a humidity dome is gonna be super helpful. And just to point out, petunias really do need a nice warm area in order to germinate. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest starting these out in your garage. I would start these inside with a grow light system where you can keep it, you know, around 68, 70, 72, somewhere around then. That will allow for better germination of the petunias. Okay, so some plant supplies that I'm gonna be utilizing. This is my new kind of soil tray mat. I got this on Amazon and it is a foldable mat that is waterproof. And I chose this option because the full-on kind of hard plastic trays, soil trays where you kind of mix all your soil up in it, too big and too expensive for what I'm wanting to do. This guy was, I think, about $10, $12, no big deal. So you put it together like this, super easy, and you can mix your soil in here and then afterwards just take it outside and dump it. Now next, you're obviously gonna need a soil blocker. I prefer to do the 2 by 2 by 2 soil blocker. So this makes 2-inch by 2-inch by 2-inch cubes of soil. And I'll go ahead and link this in my Amazon storefront along with the soil mat, just so you can check it out if you're interested. And next, I'm going to need some seed starting mix. I just use whatever's available at my big box store. Everyone's different. You can order some online. You can get it at a lot of different places. I don't care for anyone in particular, although I do think I need to do some more research on what's more cost effective for seed starting material. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to dump this whole thing in because I am going to use all of the soil. All right, and then I'm going to kind of go through it and break up any kind of clumps that I see in it. Looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is I have a container of water here. So I'm just going to start working the water through the soil. It's pretty easy. I mean, you're not making an absolute mud pie, but you want to work your hands through the soil, mixing in the water, and the soil kind of rejects the water at first on the seed starting mix. So you do kind of have to work for it. It slides to the bottom, so I like to run my fingers under and then turn the soil over when I'm working with it. And I add a little bit of water at a time, and the goal is for you to be able to clump the soil and for it to stay together. And you can see that it kind of falls apart when I do that right now, so I definitely need to add more water. Okay, so at this point, the soil is clumped together pretty nicely. It's still a little bit soft, which I think is good. Water isn't falling out of it, so I feel really good about it. I'm gonna go ahead and do a test block. So basically, I'm gonna pull my soil toward the center. I'm gonna take my soil blocker and I'm gonna rock it back and forth all the way down. until I feel like I'm hitting the base, like that. I pull it up, and I typically will come and across and smooth it out. All right, let me grab my tray. I really like this plastic tray. I really like how big it is. All right, so I'm gonna pull my seed tray over here, and I'm gonna go ahead and start with my soil block. I'm centering it over here, and I'm making sure there's at least an inch gap around all the edges so that water can access it, and I'm pushing down with the handle and then pulling up the bottom of the block, just like that. So that holds together pretty well. It feels good, not too wet, not too dry. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a set of 16 blocks over here, and I'm gonna do a set of 16 blocks in a square over here with ways to water channels all the way around. So I wanna make sure when I pour the water around that it's not just accessing it from one side. I wanna make sure the water can go all the way around the set of soil blocks. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Okay, so one container of the soil, the seed starting soil, gave me 16, 32, 48, 52 2x2x2 soil blocks. So I do need a little bit more, but I'm out of soil, so I have to go pick some up. But we'll start with what we have now. I don't want to walk away from this while the soil is moist, because I want to go ahead and get my seeds in and get the humidity dome on. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start with the container that has 32 soil blocks in it right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do 4 varieties in here. I'm gonna do the Alyssum, I'm gonna do the Viola Bulls Black, I'm gonna do the Viola Mineola Heart Aqua, and I'm gonna do the Frizzle Sizzle Yellow Blue Swirl Viola. All in these. They all have relatively the same sprout times, which I think is good for germination. Once again, you don't want to mix up wide varieties of germination in the same big container. That's one of the reasons why I really was interested in the Vico containers, because it allowed me to just do 8 small seedlings in one container with its own humidity dome. That worked way better because I like to do a wide variety of seeds, but not a whole lot of each of those varieties. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these in. These are all surface sow. I'm just gonna knock it out real quick. Y'all don't need to see me putting every single seed in, and then I'm gonna make sure I label them as I go. I did want to point out that I'm gonna be putting at least 3 seeds in each of these soil blocks, and then as everything sprouts, I'll thin it out. Okay, so I've got all of these taken care of, these 4 varieties. I did use the tip of my Sharpie to go through and make sure to press the seed down firmly so that it has really great contact with the soil. Sometimes it's not just enough just to sprinkle it on top. You want to make sure that it really touches the soil, because that's where it's going to get the water in order to be able to soften and then germinate. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is use my mister, really go through and moisten all this up. This mister is on my Amazon storefront. If you're interested, I flip and love it. It doesn't disperse the seeds. A lot of times I'll put a little bit of hydrogen peroxide in this as well to help with algae or mold buildup. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of water, just to allow all these some additional moisture to soak up. And then finally, Humidity dome is on. Yay! I made sure that all my things are closed up as well. And then this will go on the shelf behind me. Let's go ahead and move it into place. Now, when I'm picking up soil trays too, I don't typically like to lift on the ends like that. I usually like to slide and reach under with my hands. Yay, let's knock out the other one. Okay, just a quick seedling update. All the tags are flipped around because I flipped my seed trays because the trays dip slightly forward, so all the water pools here. So I switch them every couple of days to make sure the water is more evenly distributed. But everything is up. These are snapdragons. So that's snapdragons, snapdragons, snapdragons. These are stock. I think those are snapdragons as well back there. These are more snapdragons. These right here are straw flowers. This is status. This is scabiosa, more straw flower. And then this is the Russian scabiosa, much smaller and more petite. But they're all doing really well. Some of y'all had asked about fungus gnats. Yes, that is something that I deal with, especially when I put in potting soil mixed in with the seed soil. I don't go through the boiling process. Every time I've done the boiling process in the past, I still get fungus gnats. So it doesn't really bother me. They're not going to hurt the plants. They're more annoying than anything else. I put up sticky traps, which are really great. They do a good job snagging them. And then I do treat the water with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, a 1-to-1 ratio. And that kills fungus gnats on contact as well. And everything's in really good shape. I'm happy with the germination rate on everything. It's really good. Scabiosas had some issues where they couldn't break off the seed caps. And so it ended up rotting in the inside. I think that's a user error. I removed the humidity dome when these were, my tray was about 50% germinated. I think I should have left my humidity dome on a little bit longer so that these seeds would, the outside of the seeds would have gotten softer for longer, and then the seedling could have busted out better. But it's fine. I still have really great germination all the way across. So real happy with where I am with the last set of seeds that I planted. I'm excited, got all these started. These particular seeds, you start anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks prior to your last frost. If you don't know when your last frost is, you can Google that. It's typically done by zip code. My last frost is around March 20th. That's the estimated March last frost. Obviously, pay attention to your weather when you're getting close to your last frost date. If your local weatherman is predicting potential freezes the week after, obviously you should wait, but just kind of pay attention to that. But that's kind of how I base everything. Now, I've shown you guys my calendar in the past, and if you didn't catch that video, make sure you go check it out. But basically, in my garden calendar, I work with all of my Post-its so I can move them around easily. And then basically, I went back and I started with my last frost date, and I counted back the weeks. So week 1, 2, 3, all the way back until week 11, which was the first week in January. So then that tells me that, hey, this is right around the time, week 8, 9, 10, this is where I'm wanting to start all of those viola, pansies, petunias, all those seeds that I want ready, that need the 6 to 10 weeks prior to the last frost. But I'm really excited, feeling really good about this. Definitely have more seeds to get started. My next seed sowing video is going to include delphinium, sweet peas. I'm going to start some lettuce. I'm going to also be starting some bells of Ireland. And then I'm also going to be starting some wheatgrass for a fun spring project. So I'm going to be getting some things going. Next week, I'm also going to be planting onions. It is that time here in the North Texas area. to be planting onions, which is very exciting. All right, if you want to keep up with me, feel free to check out my community tab on YouTube. A lot of people say that they don't have a social media platform, and if you don't, then that is a way you can do that, the community tab on YouTube. You can also check me out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. As always, she's a mad gardener or a decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.